The cameras were still rolling when John Wayne looked up at John Ford and walked off the set without saying a word. A 40-year friendship ended in that silent walk. Monument Valley. October 1966. The red sand stretched endlessly beneath an unforgiving sun. The same landscape where John Ford had filmed Stagecoach in 1939, the film that made John Wayne a star. The same towering buttes that had witnessed their greatest collaborations. Ford Apache, she wore a yellow ribbon, The Searchers. They had made 14 films together across 27 years. Director and actor. Mentor and student. Two stubborn men who spoke in grunts and silences, who understood each other without words, who had built the mythology of the American West one frame at a time. But that understanding was about to shatter. The production was called The War Wagon. Not a Ford picture. Ford was only visiting the set, ostensibly to watch his protégé work. But everyone knew why he was really there. Ford was sick. Cancer, though he refused to speak the word aloud. At 72, he looked older. The eye patch he'd worn for decades now seemed less like an affectation and more like a mark of mortality. Wayne was 59. His own health wasn't what it had been. A lung removed to cancer 3 years earlier, a secret he'd kept from the press. But he was still working. Still the biggest star in Hollywood. Still the man Ford had created. The scene they were rehearsing was simple. A campfire conversation. Wayne's character telling a story about the war. 5 pages of dialogue. Standard Western fare. Ford sat in his director's chair 20 feet from the camera, watching. He wasn't supposed to interfere. This was director Burt Kennedy's set, but Ford couldn't help himself. He never could. "Duke," Ford called out, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. "You're playing it too soft. Give me more steel in that line." Wayne paused. Looked over. Said nothing. Kennedy, the actual director, shifted uncomfortably. "John, I think Duke's instinct is right for this moment." "I didn't ask you," Ford snapped, his single eye fixed on Wayne. "Duke knows what I mean. He's done it 100 times. Give me the line again. With backbone this time." The crew went silent. Everyone on that set understood the dynamic between Ford and Wayne. The younger man had endured Ford's brutality for decades. The public humiliation, the cruel nicknames, the deliberate undermining during takes. Ford called it directing. Others called it abuse. Wayne had always taken it. Had always believed it made him better. But something was different today. Wayne stood there in the dust, still in costume, and for the first time in 40 years, he didn't comply immediately. He just looked at Ford. A long look. The kind that lasts 3 seconds but contains decades. "Pappy," Wayne said quietly. His nickname for Ford, used only in private. "This isn't your picture." Ford's face hardened. "I'm well aware. I'm also aware that you're giving a performance that would embarrass a summer stock actor." Wayne didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The crew had stopped pretending to work. Grips held cables motionless. The script supervisor's pen froze above her notes. Kennedy stood beside the camera, caught between two giants with nowhere to hide. Wayne removed his hat. Slowly. The gesture oddly formal, like a man entering a church or preparing to deliver bad news. "I've taken your direction for 27 years, Wayne said, his voice still quiet but carrying across the desert silence. "I've let you tear me down in front of crews. I've let you tell me I can't act, can't think, can't do anything without you. And I took it because I believed you were making me better. Because I respected you." Ford started to speak. Wayne held up one hand. "Stop. But you're not the director here. And you haven't been well. And I think..." Wayne paused, choosing words carefully. "I think you're afraid." "Afraid?" Ford's voice went sharp. "Of what?" "That you're not needed anymore." The words landed like a punch. Ford's jaw clenched. His single visible eye went dark with something that looked like fury but might have been pain. "Get back to work," Ford said coldly. Stop wasting everyone's time with your philosophy. Wayne nodded. Once. Then he turned to Kennedy. Bert, I apologize. I need to step away for a moment. He started walking. Not toward his trailer. Not toward the craft services tent. He walked toward the open desert, toward the massive rock formations in the distance, his boots leaving prints in the red sand. Ford stood up from his chair. Duke, where the hell do you think you're going? Wayne didn't turn around. Didn't respond. Just kept walking. I said stop. Ford called after him, his voice rising now, the authority of 4 decades of command behind it. Wayne stopped. For just a moment. But he didn't turn around. Then he kept walking. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. To understand what broke between them that day, you need to understand how it was built. 1939. John Wayne was 32 years old and going nowhere. He'd been making B-westerns for a decade. Cheap, forgettable pictures that played in second-run theaters. He was tall, handsome, competent. But he wasn't a star. Wasn't even close. John Ford saw something else. Ford was already a legend, the director who'd won Oscars, who'd made The Informer, who commanded absolute respect in Hollywood. When Ford decided to make Stagecoach, everyone expected him to cast Gary Cooper or Joel McCrea in the lead role. Instead, Ford cast Wayne, a B-movie actor nobody believed in. The studio executives protested. Ford insisted. He always insisted. Stagecoach made Wayne a star overnight. The film was a sensation. Wayne's performance, his walk, his stillness, his ability to convey everything with almost nothing, became iconic instantly. And Wayne never forgot that he owed it all to Ford. For the next 27 years, Wayne did everything Ford asked. He took the abuse, the cruelty disguised as direction, the public humiliation that Ford seemed to need to inflict. During the filming of She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Ford made Wayne do 47 takes of a simple mounting a horse shot, berating him loudly in front of the entire crew for riding like a greenhorn. Wayne had done it. All 47 takes. Without complaint. During the searchers, Ford made Wayne deliver a key emotional scene 18 times, each time telling him it was garbage and amateur hour. The 19th take was the one Ford printed. Identical to take 3, but Wayne had been sufficiently broken down by then. Wayne took it all because he believed Ford was a genius. Because he believed the humiliation served the work. Because he respected the man who'd made him a star. But respect has limits. And Ford had finally found them. The truth was that Ford was dying. The cancer was spreading. He had maybe 2 years left, though he wouldn't admit it even to himself. And he was terrified. Terrified of being forgotten. Terrified of being irrelevant. Terrified that the industry he dominated for 40 years would move on without him. So he'd come to Wayne's set, uninvited, unnecessary, to prove he was still needed. Still the master. Still the only one who could make John Wayne perform correctly. Wayne understood all of this. He'd known Ford long enough to read the fear beneath the cruelty. But understanding didn't mean accepting it anymore. Away from the cameras, Wayne made a choice no one expected. He walked for 20 minutes into the desert. Far enough that the set became small behind him. Far enough that the voices faded into silence. He stood beneath the towering rock formations, the monuments that had been the backdrop for so many of Ford's masterpieces, and he made a decision. He couldn't do this anymore. Not the abuse. Not the pretense that cruelty was artistry. Not the performance of grateful submission to a sick old man who needed to feel powerful. Ford had given him everything. Wayne knew that. Would always know that. But debt has a limit. Gratitude can't justify everything. When Wayne returned to the set 40 minutes later, the crew was scattered. Some smoking. Some sitting in the shade of equipment trucks. Kennedy was talking quietly with the cinematographer, trying to figure out if they could salvage the day's shooting schedule. Ford was still in his director's chair. Waiting. Wayne walked past him without stopping. Went to his trailer. Emerged 10 minutes later in street clothes, jeans, a simple shirt, his own worn cowboy hat. He walked to Kennedy. "Bert, I apologize for disrupting your set. We can resume tomorrow. I'll give you whatever you need. But right now I need to leave." Kennedy nodded. He understood. Everyone understood. Wayne got in his truck. Started the engine. And as he pulled away from the Monument Valley set, he passed Ford's chair one final time. Ford sat there, eye patch dark against his weathered face, watching the truck drive away. He didn't call out. Didn't stand. Just watched. Later, Ford would tell people that Wayne had been unprofessional. That the desert heat had gotten to him. That it was nothing, just one of those things that happens on long shoots. But everyone who'd been there knew the truth. They'd watched a 40-year relationship end in the dust and silence of Monument Valley. They'd seen John Ford finally push too far. And they'd seen John Wayne walk away from the man who'd made him a star. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. They never worked together again. Ford made one more film, 7 Women in 1966, before his health forced him into retirement. He died in 1973, 7 years after that day in Monument Valley. Wayne attended the funeral but didn't speak at the service. He stood in the back, hat in his hands, and left before the reception. Wayne himself had 13 more years. He made dozens more films. Won his only Oscar in 1969 for True Grit. Became even more iconic in his final decade, the embodiment of an America that was rapidly disappearing. But he never spoke about Ford publicly after 1966. In interviews, when asked about his greatest director, Wayne would name other names. Howard Hawks. Henry Hathaway. Anyone but Ford. Once, in 1976, a journalist pressed him. "But Mr. Wayne, surely John Ford was the most important director in your career?" Wayne had looked at the interviewer for a long moment. Then he'd said, "John Ford made me a star. But I spent the next 40 years paying for it. At some point, the debt is settled." That was all he would say. The Monument Valley set where it happened became something of a legend in Hollywood. Crew members who'd been there told the story in hushed voices. The day Duke walked away from Pappy. The day the student finally said no to the master. Some saw it as betrayal. Wayne abandoning the man who'd made him everything he was. Others saw it as long overdue. A man finally recognizing that gratitude doesn't require self-destruction. Wayne saw it as something simpler, the moment he chose his own dignity over someone else's need for control. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Years later, after both men were gone, a film historian found footage from that day, raw, unedited 16mm film shot by a crew member who'd kept his camera running. The footage shows Wayne walking into the desert. Shows Ford sitting rigid in his chair. Shows the moment Wayne drives away. But the most devastating part is the sound. Or rather, the absence of it. In 40 minutes of footage, neither man speaks a single word after Wayne's initial departure. The only sound is wind across the desert, boots in sand, and engine starting. Two men who'd collaborated on 14 films. Who'd created the iconography of the American West. Who'd known each other for 4 decades. Ending their relationship in complete silence. The footage was never released publicly. But those who've seen it say the same thing. You can watch a friendship die without a single word being spoken. Ford kept Wayne's photograph on his desk until the day he died. Face down. Wayne kept the hat he wore in Stagecoach, his first film with Ford, in a glass case in his home. He never looked at it. In 1973, when Ford's death was announced, Wayne was on location in Oregon. A reporter asked him for a statement. Wayne removed his hat, held it against his chest, and said only this. "He made me everything I am. And he made me pay for it every day after. I hope he's at peace now." Then he put his hat back on and walked away. Just like he'd done in Monument Valley 7 years before. Some men speak their goodbyes. Others walk them. John Wayne walked his. And John Ford spent the rest of his life sitting in that director's chair, watching him go.